Hey guys, and welcome to Faewood. So I'm finally starting this fairy necklace, and before I actually work on the necklace itself, I wanted to create a template and just make sure where I want it to sit on my neck. So I drew out the pattern, like the shape that I thought it should be, and cut it out from cardboard, and that way I could just lay that around my neck without wasting any of the stiff stuff. And I didn't show me trying it on, but I was happy where with how it looked and where it was sitting. So then I traced that onto the lacy stiff stuff. Now, when I placed these stones, what I was thinking about was where they would sit on my neck as well. So you have to kind of keep that point in consideration. You know, do you want it more towards the front? Do you want it sitting around the side of your neck? You know, where do you want that to sit? Because sometimes I've gone in looking at it and put things in a place and then sort of realized I don't like where it's sitting. Now I wanted to try Shibori Silk Ribbon, and this was a really great opportunity because I felt like it would suit this necklace really nicely. I really liked the idea of having it flowing through the necklace, kind of like magic flowing through, because it's got those lovely lines, and I feel like that gives a really interesting texture, I guess, to the piece. And I did end up going for the darker colour. Now, what I did watch some tutorials, had a look at some, you know, like shoots and different things, some tips and things on how to do it. And one of the things was, you know, if you wanted it to start from a point, like you wanted that first part to be like it to fan out from one point, if I'm making sense, you want to then sew that end really tightly together so that you're holding all those pleats together instead of just sewing it straight down onto the backing, I guess. So I started by putting some stitches back and forward through all those pleats to really pinch those together and hold them tight before sewing it down onto my stiff stuff. Now, part of my guidelines for where I wanted this to go was, of course, in between the lines of that template. I've used pins to help hold it into place as I work out where I want it. And you'll notice that when I pry the pleats apart, you get that lovely green colour coming through. So the way this is dyed is so that it looks purple, and then between the pleats it looks green, which I love that. And how I've sort of put this first part onto the piece is I've really billowed it out. So I've pinned it down so that the pleats are pulled apart, but also I've allowed some room for it to bubble up, and that's by not pulling it too tight, by giving some slack to the pleating so that it sits up like that. And there's nothing underneath it, so if you do press it, it will press down, you know. Arguably you could put some padding underneath it if you really wanted to, but my understanding is generally people don't. You just pin it and then sew it in place as it is. So you're sewing on the very edge, on that raw edge. And I'm just trying to keep my stitches really small and trying to make sure I'm only going through that very edge of the ribbon and not through the pleats above it. So you have to sort of keep an eye on that. You can see I've made it sweep kind of across where that stone is too. Hello? You're sitting there, are you, Fizzy? Huh? Is this where we're sitting? How am I meant to do beadwork with you? Now I wanted it to then come together again and pinch above that first bulbous part. I don't know if I'm describing this very well. So I wanted to then pull those pleats in. So then you're just sort of pinning those more tightly together then, and then sewing on the edge of those as well. And then you can sew between the pleats as well, particularly if you are pinching it together. You can definitely sew between the pleats. If you're wanting it to really billow out like I'm doing, then you don't want to sew between those pleats because it will pull it down. You just want to keep all of your stitching right to the edge, and it will be a raw edge, and you do need to consider that you'll need to cover that edge. It's, easy enough to cover it with beads. You could just do a back stitch with beads. You could use anything that you like. Some people even have it flow over the edge and sew behind the backing that they're using, so that you don't necessarily have to bead on the edge. It depends on the shape that you're going for, I guess. Now I struggled a little bit with my pins. I did start by sticking the pins in just almost like nails, just like not pinning it like you would with a piece of material, but just sticking that end of the pin in, because I'd seen someone had done that and placed the pins, just the very tip sticking into their backing, and done that in a few different places. I kept finding my pins were falling out though as I was stitching, because they didn't have a lot to grab onto, I guess, pinning in that way. So I did end up having to pin them as you would normally put a pin in by, pushing it through the fabric and then pulling it back up and pushing it through again so that it's grabbing onto the fabric. I hope that's making sense. I feel like I'm not making sense today because I'm not well, but I'm doing my best. So I did have to consider where the shibori would go with the stone, so I had to leave enough room that it could fit through. And you've got options then to kind of go around the stone, and I just went sort of alongside it and then billowed it out again. I did also consider some of the other colours to see whether I'd like to put anything else on the piece, but at this point I'm focused on just connecting this first bit of shibori silk. So you can see I'm doing a few pins at a time. I just found it easier than pinning the whole thing. And that's going to depend on you. If you really feel like you need to plan ahead and pin the whole thing down, then definitely do that. Just make sure those pins are going to stay in place for you while you sew. That was the trouble I was having, as I said. But, pinning them like I have there, where I've pinned them right in, that worked better for me. And I just did bit by bit. Now up the top here, I knew that this was going to sit behind my neck, and so I didn't want it to billow out as much. So I did start sewing between those pleats here, as you can see. And I really like the look of some of the shibori silk that I've seen where the beadwork does start to go between each of those pleats a little bit and gives another unique look to it. So I've got a lot more texture happening up the top because I am pressing it down further. I've got a much more pronounced corner where I've really bent that Shibori silk instead of it being as smooth as the bottom part of it. So it's just giving a really different look up there. You can see this is quite simple. It's really easy to do. I'll be doing some additional beadwork, of course, so if you want to see where this goes and see how I end up beading around the silk, then make sure you subscribe and keep watch out for these videos. I'll be trying to do videos, I think, every fortnight or so. I would like to do some other projects in the middle, so keep an eye out though. There's all sorts of things that is going to go into this necklace, so I hope you will enjoy seeing where this goes. Apologies if I am not to my normal standard because I'm not well, but I hope you've enjoyed watching me do this shibori, and I hope you're looking forward to the next video. Bye guys.